Good morning, everybody, and welcome to part one of the introduction to Jewish spirituality and meditation through prayer. Please comment or note that you're here, so I know that I'm who I'm talking to. If you could please let me know. I'm just going to post this to social media to let people know that we are broadcasting this live now. Just give me a second. If you are with me, please let me know that you're there. I'm just posting this to social media. If you could please share this video. Hi, Marty. If you could please share this video on your pages to other people, or at least tag other people. Let them know. People that you think might be interested. It would be nice to invite them or to tag them so that they can watch this. Just posting. 1 second. Almost ready. Okay. One post and another post coming in. Now. Okay, great. Hi, Rob. Do you always wear a suit? What? How do you know he's wearing a suit? Hi, Robin from Atlanta. Great. Okay, here we are, folks. Again, if you can tag other people that you think might be interested in the concept of Jewish spirituality and meditation through prayer, that would be terrific. I would love to rebuild our audience from the previous podcast where we had he's in this picture, where we had over 20 listeners. It would be great. We're building up the crowd right now. It's great to introduce this course to everybody. And like somebody said to me earlier, that it's really beautiful how we're making lemonade out of lemons. Somebody wrote me an email, a really nice email. Let me read it quickly. She said to me, I want to thank you for online classes. Tanya class, they're available tools you are sharing. You're making lemons from lemonade. This is a difficult time for everyone. I hope that you and your family keep safe and healthy. I will sign on live if I can, or else I'll listen on Facebook later in the day. So it's really nice to be able to connect with people on a more meaningful level. Folks, what this class is about, this discussion, is really about becoming comfortable in the shul. Your average Jew who walks in from the street just doesn't know what's going on. And what this class is about is to be able to allow them to feel comfortable. We're going to be going through 3 levels of study right now. Number 1, we're going to be introducing a basic refresher on Hebrew reading. Just that you can get a little more comfortable with Hebrew reading, a nice refresher. There will also be an understanding of the general idea behind prayer. What is actually going on? How is this a spiritual experience? How am I supposed to be inspired by endlessly reciting words? And that's something which I think is the first question people walk into a shul and they struggle with, like, what? How is this inspiring? And that's what this class is going to be about. You know, when somebody and the 3rd level is also an understanding of meditation and what you're supposed to be meditating upon. So we'll be doing that through this course. It's going to take much more than 1 session. And my goal is to actually take on 1 paragraph of prayer that will become yours. You will own it. You will feel totally and completely comfortable in that paragraph of prayer, so that when you read that 1 paragraph of prayer, it's a paragraph that comes up in every single prayer. It's one of the most popular prayers ever. That way, when you come into a shul, you'll be able to say, oh, I know exactly what this is talking about. Not only can I read it, level 1, I can also understand it, level 2. And I even know what I'm supposed to be meditating upon and how this is a spiritual experience. So that's what we're trying to be doing. Good morning, Corey. Hi, Corey. Corey also teaches a very beautiful Hebrew class at the shul. She's teaching right now Tehillim, I believe, the Psalms. And I also think she was doing Haggadah, the Haggadah of Pesach. Corey is a great teacher. I know she had about 20 students in her class yesterday. And this would certainly be a springboard to welcome people to Corey's class. If you want extra next level stuff, you can always join Corey's class as well. So here we are, and I would love to hear your comments and thoughts as we approach this. I just want to describe to you the way I see a Jew who walks into shul. Guy walks into shul, it's a yard site, maybe a friend invited him. He walks in, is a little intimidated. The very walking in through the door is a big deal. The fact that they walked in the doors wasn't easy. You know, I often say that when we American Jews travel to, you know, Prague or Budapest or some European city, we always want to go first to the synagogue. We always want to see the synagogue, Jewish life. We want to see Jewish life in this historic city. But you ask the same person if he's ever been to the synagogue in Palm Beach Gardens or the synagogue in Manhattan or New Jersey, they're like, not so much. Why is that? Why is it that we see synagogues as museums of culture and heritage more than places of vibrant and dynamic life, inspiration, spirituality, meditation, and more than anything, places of relevance and meaning to our lives? That's what this course is about. And I'm excited to take this journey on with you, and I hope that you'll comment and critique and do whatever you need to do to engage me over here so that I can go deeper by understanding where exactly you're holding and where you stand. Again, if you could share this video on your page, that would be great, so other people can also join in. And if you could tag people, invite people that you think would be interested in a course on Jewish spirituality and meditation through prayer, that would be a great thing so we can spread the word. Okay, so with that, I'd like to describe to you what it's like. A guy walks into shul for the first time. The first thing that they give him is a book. It's like this thick. He's getting a book. It's heavy. It's heavy. It's like 400 pages. Like the first thought that goes through his head is OMG. Oh my God. It's a religious experience right there. It's OMG. My God, I'm going to read this whole book. And then he opens it up and he sees so much Hebrew. He automatically feels so alienated. And they sit down and everybody's reading. And everybody's minding their own business. And this guy is like, what did I get myself into? Why am I here? First thing he does, he looks at his watch. How can I get out of here? How can I sneak out of here? It's not a spiritual experience. And then when he opens the book and he sees it's in Hebrew, or even it's in English, but it's like stuff that he can't really relate to. It's like praising God and stuff. The next thought that comes to his mind is that God has like severe self-esteem issues. Like, why does God need my praise? He needs me to praise him every single day. So much praises. I mean, I don't even praise my wife or my kids this much. It's like God needs such therapy. And then you start, hi, good morning, Susan. Welcome to our study here. And you think that God needs such therapy, that he's such insecurity and such a chip on his shoulder. And you think, why am I worshiping a God that is so insecure? But this course is going to turn all that on its head. This discussion is designed to help us understand the context of prayer. What are we actually trying to achieve? What are our goals? Where are we going? And why are we doing this? Now, I don't think today we're going to be able to actually get into the actual paragraph that we're taking on, where we'll be able to understand, to learn how to read it in Hebrew in a way that you're comfortable, to be able to understand the meaning of it, of all the words of that paragraph. And number 3, to be able to know what to meditate upon. That's 3 levels what this course is about. Number 1, reading. Number 2, understanding. And number 3 is meditating. So we won't be able to get into that, but we are going to do an introduction today. So the first notion I want to share with you is that all the praises of prayer, is that before we get to the praises of prayer, I would like to explain why we pray in the first place. So the reason why we pray, hi Cookie, good morning, hey Chana. The reason that we pray is because we are commanded in the Torah to have a meaningful relationship with God. That's the reason. God wants to have a relationship with us. Therefore we daven. But how is prayer a meaningful relationship with God? So initially it started that we would bring offerings in the temple. In temple times, we would literally bring offerings for every meaningful life experience. When it came to a Jewish holiday, when it came to a reason that you were grateful, if you had gratitude for a baby that was born, or you got married, or maybe then the atone for your sin, you would bring an animal and offer it to God. Kind of like bringing a big check donation to the Chabad. And imagine you walked into the Chabad with a big donation, $5,000, I don't know, whatever you think is a big donation. It's like a major experience. And when you give big donation to charity, you feel, I did something for God. And that's how the temple times, they had these offerings before God. If you had to bring a bull or a cow as an offering to God, I'm not sure how much cows go for on Amazon, but I imagine that they're pretty expensive. Maybe in Costco you can buy cows or lambs in bulk. But they probably cost a lot. It's probably about 2 or 3. It's probably like $3,600 for a cow, if I had to guess. Like 200 times chai. That's probably how much a cow costs. And if you had to figure that every time you sinned, you had to bring a donation of $3,600, that's like a lot, So it make you think twice. Or if you were grateful for something, you had a granddaughter born to you that was healthy, or your son got married, then you wanted to be grateful to God. You'd bring an offering in the temple. During the temple times, there was a woman called Hannah. And Hannah was the woman who shaped how we daven for the rest of time until today. You see, Hannah is the story that we read about on Rosh Hashanah. During the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we read the Haftarah, the story of Hannah, which was a story that actually took place on Rosh Hashanah. She was a woman married to a man by the name of Elkanah. Elkanah was a very righteous man, and she was a very righteous woman. Problem was that she was infertile. So Elkanah made it his business to travel every single Yontif, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, what are called in Hebrew the Shalosh Regalim, the three pilgrimage festivals, basically the 3 times of the year when you're supposed to go to Jerusalem to worship God in the temple, to serve, to have a meaningful relationship with God in the temple. And he would make it his business to always travel with great fanfare and on a different route every single Yontif towards Jerusalem. The reason he did a different route was in order to encourage more people to join. And he made it more trendy and more fashionable by making the more people. When you see a lot of people doing something, you feel like you're missing out on something. You feel the FOMO, fear of missing out. It's like walking into an empty restaurant. When you walk into an empty restaurant, you're like, let's get out of here. But when you walk into a full restaurant where there's no tables available, that's when you want to stand in line and you want to find a seat. Because you feel if everybody else is here, then obviously I should be here as well. So when Elkanah made it his business to travel to the temple with as many people as possible, and he would gather as many pilgrims as he possibly could on the way to the temple. So this way, when he reached the temple in Jerusalem, there were many, many, many Jews there as well. Now, when he got to the temple, he offered his offerings, sacrifices, and Hannah was very upset because she never had any kids. At one point, she encourages her husband to get a second wife. Her name was Penina. Penina means pearls, or a pearl. And she encourages him to get a second wife, just like Abraham and Sarah did when they were infertile. Abraham marries his maidservant Hagar, who gives birth to our great cousin Ishmael, the father of all the Arabs. So she figured that the logic here was, when polygamy was allowed, to have more than one wife was allowed, until 1,000 years ago. That's a different story as to why that was banned. But Sarah figured that if she allows her husband to have another wife, then by granting him children, she will also be granted children measure for measure, because God treats us the way we treat others. So Hannah figured the same thing. By giving another wife to her husband Elkanah, giving him children, she also will merit to get children. And so it was that Penina marries Elkanah as a second wife. And Penina immediately gets pregnant. She gives birth to 10 boys, one after the other, pops them out one after the other. And Hannah is increasingly bereaved because she's the first wife, the primary wife, and now she notices that she's got no kids, and Penina's got all the kids. So what she does is that she goes with her husband to the temple, and she offers a silent prayer at the temple, not in Jerusalem actually, it was in Shiloh. It was the tabernacle, the temporary temple. There was still at Shiloh. This is the one that Moses built in the desert. You're talking now about about 2,700 years ago is the story. So Hannah is standing there at the temple, and she's the first woman that we know of that is praying silently, verbally to God. She's actually talking to God. This was such an unusual experience that the high priest sees her. He's convinced that she was drunk, and he wants to throw her out of the temple until she tells him, no, I'm pouring my heart out. I'm pouring my soul out before God. And that's when he blesses her, and he tells her that you're praying for a son. You will be blessed with a son. He blesses her, and immediately, the next year, she is blessed with a son, with Samuel the prophet. This is Samuel who anoints he anoints King Saul, the first king of Israel, and he anoints David, the second king of Israel, a very important player in the history of the Jewish people. But it is from Hannah that we learn many of the laws, most of the laws of verbal prayer. What initially began as offering money, animals to God in order to have a relationship with God, evolved into a personal prayer relationship with God where you literally talk to God. So once the temple was destroyed, our sages replaced the daily offerings with prayers, with daily prayers. So there were two daily offerings. There was the morning offering and there was the afternoon offering. These were called the Korban Tamid. The word Tamid means eternal, means always. So just like you have in the synagogues around the world, you have something called the Ner Tamid. Ner means a candle. Tamid means always. Ner Tamid means the always candle, the forever candle, the candle that burns always. So too, you had an offering that was an always offering. By the way, the Ner Tamid, the perpetual candle in the temple, in the synagogues, is because on the altar in the temple there was a fire burning always. There was always a fire burning. It was a mitzvah to always have a fire burning, and that's how we remember it, by having an eternal candle in the synagogues around the world. But just like you had the daily offering in the morning and the daily offering in the afternoon, so too the sages replaced those daily offerings once the temple was destroyed with a morning prayer called Shachris. Shachris means morning, Shacharit. Shachar actually means dawn. And the afternoon service called Mincha. Mincha means afternoon. There was also a third service, the evening service, which was replacing an optional offering that was offered upon the altar in the evening, and that's what's called the evening service, which is why, till today, the evening service is actually optional. The morning and afternoon services are mandatory. But the way that we pray, and what this course is about, the way that we pray, the context of prayer, is about establishing a personal relationship with God. So if your prayer is about mindlessly reading words, you're missing the point. You're not doing it right. You shouldn't be going that's not respectful. Imagine you walked up to President Trump and you went to him, he would be like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? He'd want to throw you into the mental asylum. You want to talk to God in a respectful way. Yes, we have a lot of words of prayer, but you have to enunciate them one at a time. Ashrei yoshvei veisecha. When you say the words word by word and you focus on the words, that's when the prayer starts to become meaningful. But the essence of prayer starts with the biblical commandment, Da et Elokei avicha ve'avdeyu belev shalem. Know the God of your fathers and serve him with a perfect heart. Know the God of your fathers and serve him with a perfect heart. Now, the word know is a very, very interesting word. What does it mean to know the God of your fathers? Does that mean to be intellectually aware of the God of your fathers? The answer is no. That's not what it means. Do you recognize this word da? Daled, ayin, da et Elokei avicha. Know the God of your fathers? By the way, folks, through this entire course, I want to encourage you to keep a diary. I want to encourage you to keep a diary. Take out a pen and paper or a computer screen or something and write down. Preferably, I want you to do it this way. I want you to take out index cards like this, index cards, where you can write down words through this course. Just like index cards like this, where you can write down a word. Let's, before the index card, just start with a diary, with just a diary right now. And the word da is going to be a word that is going to come over and over and over and over and over throughout all of our prayers. And every time you come across that word, you will now know what it means. I'm going to give you the tools through this course to be able to make all of your prayers meaningful. I'm going to give you, my goal in this course is to give you 100 words that you understand, not only their translation, but their soul. You'll understand the meaning of the words. So that in Hebrew, every time you'll see that word appear again in another context, you'll be like, oh, I know what this means. And you'll have what to think about. You'll understand what it means in that context. And you'll find yourself understanding the meaning of the prayers. Your prayer is never, ever going to be the same again after this course, God willing. I'm excited about this. So the first word I want you to write down is the word tamid. We spoke about it earlier, the ner tamid, the eternal candle. We spoke about the daily offering. Tamid, you can write it in English if you want. T-A-M-I-D, tamid, T-A-M-I-D. And that word it means always. Tamid means always. It's a very important word that's going to come up a lot in your prayers. So please, folks, write down that word. And it's going to be the first word in our word Hebrew diary, in our Hebrew word diary. And the second word is da, which is dalid ayin, or in English letters that's D-A, or D-A-A-T, da, same word. So da, which means the following. Da means realization. It comes, you'll find it in the word Chabad. What does Chabad mean? Chabad is an acronym for 3 words. Chachma, Bina, Dat. Chachma, Bina, Dat, which means conceptualization. Chachma means inspiration. It's the idea. When you get an idea, a flash, a burst of inspiration, that's Chachma. Bina means understanding, comprehension. And Dat means realization. The word Dat is not merely a logical term. It's not merely a rational term. Dat is when rationalization becomes personal. In the level of Bina, Chachma Bina Dat, remember Chabad, Chachma Bina Dat, because Chabad is a rational approach to faith. In general, when you go to Chabad, when you have a Chabad rabbi, when you consider yourself a Chabadnik, it means that your relationship with God is rational. You understand and study and meditate upon the greatness of God, and you have a meaningful, rational relationship with God. It's not pure faith. It's actually something which you understand and appreciate. That's Chachma Bina Dat. A Chabadnik is one that deepens his faith or her faith through understanding and making it more meaningful, as opposed to just do it because I said, or do it because that's how my bubby did it. I'm eating matzah because it means something to me. I'm laying tefillin because it makes sense to me. Not entirely. I don't totally understand the wisdom of God, but I'm working on it. And I'm constantly pushing the envelope to understand more and more and more and more about the rationalization and logic behind the mitzvahs that I do, thus making them more meaningful to us as human beings, as rational, logical human beings. So Chachma Bina Das is the 3 levels of a Chabadnik, of any intellectual understanding of anything. We started with an idea that's called Chachma, conceptualization. Bina is understanding. But even once you've understood, it's rationally understood, what do you need to do more than that? What Dat adds to Bina is that it takes what you've already understood and it makes it deeply personal. It makes it relevant to yourself. When something which you've understood becomes subjective, it's now Das. So the difference between Bina, understanding, and Das, which is realization, is that Bina is objective understanding. Dat is subjective understanding. When something is subjective, it means that it's personal. It means understanding, becoming, feeling. That is the meaning of Das. That's why I call it realization, because realization, when you realize something, it's still an intellectual word. It's like understanding. It's an intellectual word. I realize. Oh, when I realize, it means that it becomes real. It becomes personal. It's something which I can relate to, and that's why I call Das realization. So that's why in your word diary, in your Hebrew word diary, the word Da, I'd like you to translate as realize or subjective understanding. When something becomes personal. That is the meaning of the word dat. And I give you a quick example of this because this is what we're going to be doing through this course. Whenever I'm going to give you a Hebrew word, I'm going to show you other places that it appears that you already know, and you'll see its application, so that when you write a little commentary, you should write your own commentary on the meaning of the word. That way, every time you'll see that word, you'll know exactly what it means and what it refers to. The first time we see this word, dat, da, dalid ayin, the first time we see this word is actually in the story of Genesis. And by the way, just in case you, I'm going to show you the Hebrew in case you want to brush up on your Hebrew. Here it is. In case you want to brush up, here it is. So the Hebrew word for, this is the Hebrew word. Am I doing it the right way? Here. This is the Hebrew word for dat. Daled ayin. Okay, so the daled, sorry, this way. The daled is recognized by a little dent at the back. See this little dent at the back? The daled has a little dent at the back. That's how you recognize a daled. Anytime you see a word which has a dent, a letter which has a dent at the back, now you know that this is your daled, right? That's your daled because it's got a dent at the back. It looks like a hammer that can dent things, right? That's the daled. This is your letter daled. The second letter is the ayin. The ayin is silent, and the reason it's the way to recognize it is it looks like a pair of eyes. The ayin is silent. It looks like a pair of eyes. Okay, two eyes, ayin. And third of all, you have the letter da, the taf, which is the da'at, right? And the taf looks like it's got toes sticking out. You see those the toes at the bottom here? It's like a toe sticking out. So that's your code for the taf. In Hebrew, if it has a dot, it's a taf, and if it doesn't have a dot, then it's a saf. Taf, saf. So to spell this word for you here, it is right here. Dot. Okay. Oops. Dot. That's your second word for your Hebrew diary. By the way, folks, I want to encourage you, if you want to brush up on your Hebrew skills, go to the App Store and download an app. It costs 99 cents, I believe, called Read It in Hebrew. R-I-I-H. Read It in Hebrew is an app which I really want you to get if you want to brush up on your Hebrew reading. What it's going to do is it's going to look at my app. It's going to give you the cards, the flashcards that you need to constantly review, and you'll be able to brush up on your Hebrew. Here's what it looks like on my app. Sorry if you can see that. Read It in Hebrew. It's $1.99. You can download it on the App Store, and if you do that, then you'll be able to brush up on your Hebrew in no time. You'll go through it every day, and you'll see the stuff I'm going to be teaching you here, and you'll be able to brush up on your Hebrew. It's going to be amazing. You'll be able to learn Hebrew, to read Hebrew, and I'll be able to take you to the next two levels, which is understanding of one specific paragraph of prayer, and number two, meditation involved. So back to what we're talking about. The word dat comes up for the first time in the Torah, in the story of Adam and Eve. When Adam married Eve, the Torah tells us, Vayeda ha'adam et chava ishto. Vayeda, the letter vav at the beginning of a word means and. Letter vav at the beginning of a word means and. You should probably write that down in your grammar section. There's going to be about 10 grammar pointers for Hebrew that you need to know. But the letter vav at the beginning of a word means and. Vayeda means and he knew, and he realized his wife. What that means is Adam had a relationship with his wife and they had children. That means they were intimate. In other words, Vayeda means Adam and Eve were intimate together. So the word da, daled ayin, the root of that word, daled ayin, is intimacy. That's what this word means, intimacy. So when in the context of wisdom, chokhmah bina da'at, it means that your wisdom becomes intimate. Your wisdom becomes something which is yours, which is private, which is personal. When you take an idea and you apply it to yourself, now you start to feel something about it, right? Now you start to feel something about it. Just to give a quick example, of this would be, when you hear about coronavirus, And you hear about all these young people that are going to the beaches. You think about, oh, these guys are so crazy that they're going to the beaches. They don't care. They're doing the spring break stuff, and they don't care. They're just hanging out. They're living life as normal. They're partying, and they don't care about spreading this virus to each other. And that's something which you understand, but it's not something that you feel yet until it comes to your attention that the beach that they're at is a beach just outside your mother-in-law's condo somewhere. Now it's like, oh my gosh, that's a little too close to home. Or if you find out that someone that's close to your mother is, not being careful, now you start to take it personally. Now you're taking it personally. It's not that you learned something that you didn't know before. You just realized something which is more personal. And now you start to feel feelings of anger or tension or stress or anxiety, because now the wisdom has gone from bina, from understanding, to the world of das, which is the level of realization of feeling. So this is the meaning of Adam knew Eve. Adam was intimate with Eve. So when the Torah tells us, the mitzvah of prayer tells us, da et Elokei avicha, what the Torah is telling us is be intimate with God. That's what it's telling us to do. The Torah wants us to be intimate with God. But how do you become intimate with God? Intimacy, in the words of Rabbi Manis Friedman, great sage and philosopher that we brought to the Chabad Palm Beach Gardens twice, I believe. He says, intimacy means into you, into me. Intimacy is what happens between one person and another one person. Intimacy is when one person plus one person equals one person. 1 + 1 = 1. That's intimacy. When two people become one, that's intimacy. You can't have intimacy with 500 people. That's a crowd. You can't have intimacy with 2 people. Intimacy is 1 + 1 = 1. And that's the reason why the format of prayer is with a mechitza down the middle, with the mechitza separating the man from the woman. Because we don't want to approach God as a couple. If I'm sitting with my wife approaching God, then it's like a group meeting. There's me and my wife. There's us approaching him. When you have a mechitza, which separates the man from the woman, you're effectively creating a situation where every single person is single. No one is coming as a group. Every person is sitting by themselves. We're alone together. We're sitting in a minyan, we're sitting in a shul, but every person is really not intimate with the person next to them. You're not intimate with the neighbor next to you. You're near them, but you're not intimately connected with them. You can only be intimate with one person at a time, with one entity at a time. If you're intimate with your husband, you can't be intimate with God at the same time. I think Manis Friedman put it this way. He said that one of the reasons that we have a mechitza is because when husband and wife are talking to each other, God doesn't want to interrupt. Think about that. When husband and wife are talking to each other, God doesn't want to interrupt because you're intimate. Same thing when you're talking to God. You shouldn't interrupt. You shouldn't interrupt. Don't let your spouse interrupt you while you're talking to God. What you're doing is holy. What you're doing is deep. It's meaningful. It's personal. So don't interrupt. You're talking to God. That's what prayer is. Da et Elokei avicha. Be intimate with God, the God of your fathers, and serve him with a perfect heart. So the way that we pray to God, the way that we become intimate with God is by talking to God. How are you intimate with your spouse? Think about it for a moment. How do you become intimate with your spouse? You don't just do something you don't just jump into a marital bed. You have a meaningful relationship. You talk to each other. That's how you become meaningful. That's how you become intimate with each other. And that's how we become intimate with God. The context of prayer is that we talk to God. And I want you to become comfortable with this idea that the context of prayer is such that you should be talking to God just like you talk to your husband or to your wife or to your children or to your parents. Get used to the idea that you can actually have a meaningful conversation with God. Talk to God. God is all around. God can hear you, and God is waiting for you to be heard. Say something. When was the last time that you actually spoke to God? for many of us, it doesn't happen all that often. My wife tells me that she speaks to God all the time, which is great. But for me, I struggle. It's hard for me to just talk to God. I think women are instinctively more spiritual. For me, it's a little more difficult to have a very, very personal talking relationship with God, like Hannah does. But it's for this reason that the sages, at the time of the Purim story, right after the Purim story, when they returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the second temple, it was then that the sages instituted the Siddur. The Siddur, which means order. The Siddur we translated as a prayer book, but it doesn't mean a prayer book. The Siddur means order. Just like the Seder on Pesach means sequence or order, it's the 15 steps that we go through in order to fulfill the mitzvahs of the evening of Passover. They gave us a template with which we can follow to be able to cover all the bases. That's the Seder. So the men of the Great Assembly, which is the sages of right after the Purim story, when they returned to Jerusalem, and they saw that Judaism was falling apart. They saw that the Jewish people, after 70 years in Persia, were just totally apathetic to spirituality. They just did all sorts of sins. They were working on Shabbos. They totally lost the plot. So the sages, under the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah and Mordechai and Esther, they basically formalized Judaism into the way that we know it today. They basically formalized 95% of Judaism. The way we know it today is based upon the sages of the Great Assembly, those that returned back to Israel after the Purim story. You're talking about 2,200 years ago. And they basically created the Siddur, the prayer book, because they realized that people weren't able to become personal and to speak to God like they used to when people were more spiritual. Before the destruction of our first temple, when we still had our first temple, miracles were all over the place. And people were more elevated and more spiritual. So what happened was that they were able to speak to God through an animal offering. You brought an animal offering and you were able to just naturally talk to God, just like Hannah was in the temple. She was just talking to God, and she poured out her heart before God in the most beautiful and eloquent way. But once we came back from the Persian exile, we kind of became more mundane, more coarse, unrefined, more crass. We were unable to just sort of naturally and organically express ourselves before God. That's why the sages instituted a formal prayer book. The prayer book is not there for us to just read mindlessly. It is there to be able to facilitate, to create the platform for us to be able to communicate effectively with God. That's what the daily prayers are. You have to always remember the essence of prayer and the purpose of the prayer, which is to develop an intimate relationship with God. And I challenge you folks, how many people in this world are you intimate with? How many people do you have an intimate relationship with? I should hope that your spouse is one of them. But beyond that, there are other forms of intimate relationships. You know, for me as a rabbi, it's important for me to have intimate relationships with each one of my members, that they should be meaningful, that they should be private, that I should know what their struggles are, that we can be on the same wavelength. That we shouldn't be like two ships just passing in the sea at night. You know, we should be able to connect, right? Obviously, a marital intimacy is a far deeper intimacy than a regular form of intimate relationship, but it's a meaningful relationship. It's a real relationship. This is what I strive for. And if you and I don't yet have a meaningful relationship, let's make it happen. Please call me. Let's set a time. Let's set a date so we can talk and just have a private, meaningful conversation. But I challenge you to think about, how intimate is your relationship with God? Is your relationship with God distant? Is it cold? Is it more like your relationship with President Trump, which is, you know, something which is like a far and distant entity, which I know has some power over my life somewhat, but, you know, just nothing personal? Or is your relationship with God like your relationship with the mayor of your city? Or maybe is your relationship with God maybe more like your relationship with the head of your HOA? Or is your relationship with God like your relationship with your spouse? That is the big question. Or is your relationship with God like your relationship with your estranged brother or brother-in-law? Or is it like your mother-in-law that you don't really talk to so much? I've got a great mother-in-law, thank God. That's the big question you got to ask yourself. If you're fulfilling the mitzvah, God's mitzvah in the Torah is to have an intimate and meaningful relationship with God. The question is, how are you doing in that department? And that's why you've got to open the prayer book and realize that the purpose of the prayer book is not mindless and endless reading, lip service. It's creating a platform that will allow you and me to be able to develop an enhanced and meaningful personal relationship with God. How that happens through the various prayers, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So stay tuned. Don't go away. Folks, please post your comments how you're doing over here. If you're connecting with my message over here, if this is making sense to you, if you think that I'm going too fast, if you think I'm going too slow, please let me know. If you think I'm going too deep, if I'm going too shallow, this is a totally original creation of mine, this course, so it's a work in progress. I figured done is better than perfect. Before I finish it all up perfectly, I'm going to evolve it carefully together with you. So I do very much need your feedback and your input to tell me about what you'd like to hear more of, what you'd like to hear less of, and if you think I'm moving fast enough or slow enough. So please let me know. Remember, 2 takeaways from today's lesson are, number 1, I really want you to establish a word diary, a Hebrew word diary, which you'll be going through regularly so that you'll become intimately familiar with the various keywords of prayer. The first word we did today was tamid. Tamid, which means T-A-M-I-D. In Hebrew, it's taf mem yud dalid. Taf mem yud dalid. Tamid, which means forever, always. And the second word we did was da. Daled ayin, sometimes it comes up as da'at, daled ayin taf, D-A-A-T, and that word means intimate knowledge. I call it realization, personalization of whatever you've learned, taking the idea and making it yours, making it personal. And that is the essence of Jewish prayer. That's the first takeaway from our class today. So we did two words for our Hebrew diary. And the second thing I want you to do is, if you don't know Hebrew, or if you want to brush up on your Hebrew reading, then please download the app for $1.99 from the App Store. It's called Read It in Hebrew, R-I-I-H. Just look it up in the App Store, read it in Hebrew, R-I-I-H, and download it. And you'll see it has these flashcards that you can go through on your phone, and you'll just constantly be brushing up your reading of the Hebrew letters, and that way you'll become much more familiar with the Hebrew letters. The goal of this course is 3. Number 1, to brush up on your Hebrew reading. Number 2, to understand 1 paragraph of prayer, which we're going to be introducing in the next few days. And 3, to know what to meditate upon when you go through that specific prayer. The result of that is going to be is that you're going to have your Hebrew diary with 100 words that will be able to give you the tools that whenever you see a certain word, you'll know what to meditate upon in that context, and you'll realize how the prayer is a platform for a personal, intimate relationship with God. So again, folks, if you could send me your comments. I see some comments coming in over here. Marty says, great start, already downloaded. Thank you, Marty. Let me know how that goes. Chana, you're doing well. Good, at a good pace. Thank you, Chana. I really appreciate your comment over there. I thank you for that. Dean, you're fantastic. I'm enjoying learning with you. Thank you, Rabbi. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dean. And folks, I'm going to carry this on every morning, every weekday morning after we do our Jewish approach to fear and anxiety and Talmud, which is at 8:30. This should be 9:30-ish, depending on how the Talmud goes. So throughout this quarantine, we want to make sure that we're all connected and we're deepening this crisis by enhancing. We're combating this crisis by deepening our spirituality, by making sure that we might be physically distanced, socially distanced from other people physically, but spiritually we're closer than ever before. So thank you, Graciela, very inspirational, perfect pace. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning. And don't forget, please share this video with your friends and other people that might be interested in Jewish spirituality and meditation through prayer, people that just don't have a clue what Jewish prayer is. This is going to fix that, I'm hoping. I'm really hoping that this recorded class is going to be one that you can send to other people, that you can watch, that you can understand what Jewish prayer is all about, how it is spiritual, how it's meaningful, how it's relevant. And I'm going to give you all the tools that you need to make that happen. But I do need your input throughout the entire course to make sure that I'm moving in the right direction. If there's something I missed, I need your input. Folks, thank you very, very much. Catch you later. Have a wonderful day. Be safe and stay away from people.